Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio.
Welcome, dear friends, to Kardec Radio. And we are here in a very special program. It's Christmas, and we wish we could have this feeling every day. I think one day we will. Till then, we're cherishing this particular day that has one reason for us to celebrate: the coming of Jesus Christ. And he's much more than anything that we could have ever imagined. He's also the greatest therapist that has ever lived. Who says it? Oh no, it's not me. It's Dr. Mark Baker, and we agree with him. He's a clinical psychologist and also a best-selling author. And I will show to you before he comes to us here, we'll show his very website. You need to explore this possibility of learning more with Dr. Baker. Here he is. And when you go to the very website, drmarkbaker.com, you'll find wonderful resources from his blog to his books. And you know the good thing? There is radio, store, videos. And you can also find, for many of us here who speak Portuguese, and I don't say everyone, but a part of us at Kardec Radio also speak Portuguese. And if you do, you can click on the Portuguese side and explore much more, even books like Jesus, the greatest therapist that has ever lived, in Portuguese. Yes, in Brazil alone, it has sold more than 2 million copies. So a wonderful opportunity for us to know more about the works of Dr. Baker. He has been at Kardec Radio before. He was also a guest speaker and a keynote speaker at the Spiritist Symposium in Atlanta many years ago. And now we're so honored that he's back here with us at a very particular time. It's this year that is ending with children's vaccinations. Hopefully, we are trusting the good that is out there, and we're conquering this pandemic every bit of the way. But still, we need more. More than vaccines, we need a direction. More than pills. We need a good emotional direction, and we need help. Is there a problem asking for help? No, actually, that's where the solution begins. And that's where we call in Dr. Baker to give us a hand and introduce us to the greatest therapist that has ever lived. Thank you so much, Dr. Baker, for being with us at Kardec Radio once again. How have you been?
I have been well. Good to see you, Vanessa. I'm always happy to be with you and to have these conversations about health and God and how we can integrate our spirituality and our emotionality in our lives. I always look forward to our conversations.
It's great to have you here. And now at this time, who could ever imagine? I remember when we last saw each other, I don't think I could ever predict that we would experience in our lifetime something like the pandemic, right?
No, I no. If you would have asked me then, how am I going to be able to help people if I can't leave my house? I would say I have no idea. And now I have a very full schedule talking to people over the internet, just like I'm talking to you.
Yes.
So our lives have changed dramatically.
Our lives have changed dramatically. And one question that I was discussing with a pediatrician the other day, is there hope at the end of all this? Like, there's so much to repair emotionally after the pandemic. Yeah. He talks about children who are just going to school after having been in the house, so much happening, and teenagers that had to be back in their homes, and they are in this verge for more. They thirsty for social life, and they had to cut it down. So what do you think? Is there hope?
Absolutely. I think there's hope. I think we are resilient, and I think we are fundamentally relational beings. So we hunger for connection. You're right. The last year, I have two teenagers in my home, and this last year was very terrible for all of us. They're trapped, and that's an age when they're very much needing to reach out and connect to their peer group. They don't find as much comfort in my words anymore. They seek the affiliation with people their own age, and they have suffered. And now we're coming out of that. But I see, as we're coming out of that, that hunger for connection is still there. That ontological need to relate. They did the best they could. They were on the internet and with their devices, and they were creating ways of connecting. It was problematic, but I see now, as they're coming out and connecting with each other, how important it is for them to thrive, to have these healthy relationships. So I'm hopeful. We know that depression is higher, depression rates are higher, anxiety rates are higher, the suicide rates are higher. We know all this. Marital conflict rates are higher because people have been trapped. If you had problems before the pandemic, and then you're trapped in your house with the person with which you had problems, it only got worse. So people are asking for help. Our schedules are full. I have 35 counselors at my counseling center. They're all full. I'm looking for more counselors because people are desperately wanting help to come out of this, and they're asking not just how do I survive, how do I thrive? And it's a question that it had not been even able to ask until now. They're coming out, going out to restaurants and football games and doing things, and having been terribly afraid now for the last almost 2 years.
Yes.
So they've been told they should be very afraid. Fear is a very toxic emotion. And now we have to come out of this and connect with other people so that we'll be able to thrive going forward. But I'm optimistic.
Yes. But you know, you're talking from a perspective of people who believed in the fact that this pandemic is real,
Yeah.
and there needs to be careful. But just like at Jesus' time, there is misinformation, and there has been. So besides fear, there is a group of people, part of our society, that is saying, no, you don't need to be that worried. You don't need to be. I'm saying because I remember we were so careful, very careful. We didn't send our child to school, and she did it all online, not because we wanted, but because we wanted. But we wanted to be safe, everyone, including her, of course, mainly her. And then many of her colleagues were in school. And then one day, when spring is just coming about, we're having this feeling like, oh, we can walk the dog more, more often. And she comes with me, and she meets this one friend in the playground one day. And they hug, come back home 5 days later. And this girl said, I don't need a mask because my mom said COVID is not in our neighborhood anymore. 5 days later, she says, I have COVID. We got COVID.
No.
Yes, we got it ourselves. And then nobody believed it. I said, you see, it only takes one thing.
One thing, right?
One. Thank God we recovered. It wasn't easy. For the child, it was a breeze, more or less. For my husband, it was a little more dramatic. But at the end of the day, you are not only living with fear and being careful and all your issues, but the clash with people who do not believe in it, who behave differently, and make you second guess yourself. So not only fear, but then you doubt, am I going too far with this? Right?
Well, yes, we have still a large percentage of people who refuse to take the vaccination, and they refuse to believe that it's real, as you're saying. But what we have found is that most of those people say that because they are afraid. They are afraid to take the vaccination. They think it's going to do damage to their body. They think that it's not researched well enough. And They don't trust Fauci, and if you get to the core of why are you being so casual about something that is real? Now you know it's real. It's because they are afraid, and their fear is causing them to push the science away and say, well, he's just making money off vaccinations, so we shouldn't trust him. You know, those kinds of things. Yeah. I think no matter which side you're on, if you're making your choices out of fear, you're damaging yourself. You're damaging yourself if you live your life based on fear. This is one of the most powerful truths that Jesus came to teach us. He says, love is more powerful than fear. This is his basis thesis. We know other writers in history disagreed with him. Machiavelli, for instance, a very famous writer on power and how politics should be run in the world. He believed fear was more powerful than love. He said, you have to choose between the two. I would rather be feared than loved, because that's a better way to live. We know that's wrong. We now know that to lead people, to lead your own life, to lead your family, love is a more powerful force in the universe, and it ultimately wins out over fear in producing a healthier life and a happier life. I think we have to ask ourselves, why, after 2,000 years, is this itinerant 33-year-old Jewish rabbi still the most popular teacher on the planet? More people follow his teachings than anyone else on the planet. It's because of these kinds of truths. He knew that. He said, no, if you want to live a more powerful life, trust. Living a loving life is more powerful than a fearful life. It was revolutionary. We still are trying to learn that lesson today.
Yes, and as you're talking about Jesus, we want to tell people, look, it's so simple. You just go to your phone. You can buy this book, Jesus, the Greatest Therapist Who Ever Lived, by Dr. Mark Baker. But you can also keep it in your phone because you can read it. And what I love about this book, not only talks about the one and only, but it teaches us how to understand people, how to understand ourselves, and how to live a better life with this growth mindset, because that's the third part of your book, and revisiting some myths that we have inside of us. So I think it's a wonderful book, not only for Christmas, it's for our lives. I think Christmas is a gift for us because it's a moment where we stop and rethink our relationship with the best of us. And Dr. Baker, when you talk about Jesus coming at a time in which there was a lot of misinformation has been existing on earth since the first day of humanity. And we see that Jesus, he came to talk about the truth. And when people go to therapy, my question to you is this: do they really want to face the truth? Or is this one of the main obstacles why people even avoid therapy, because they cannot handle the truth?
It's a complicated question because, and it's the right question, because Jesus didn't say, I will teach you the truth. He didn't say that. He said, I am the truth. So truth is personified, right? I believe that in order to really be truthful, we have to be relational. And that's what Jesus was saying. If you want to know the truth, you have to have a relationship with me. This was his central teaching. A relationship with me, then you'll know the truth, once you have a genuine relationship with me. So the answer is yes. I think people are coming seeking the truth, but they are afraid, they've been abused, they've been misinformed, they're confused, they're hurt. They've been traumatized, and so they don't know what that means. They think, most people come to me and they think, well, you've got all these degrees, you have all these books, you should just tell me. What do I need to know? Just tell me and I'll go do it. What should I do is the question we often get. There's no answer to that, because you already have enough knowledge to live out the things you know in your head, but you get in your own way. The human mind is very complex, and we are our own worst enemy because our mind can operate out of our awareness. So I can believe things and not know I believe them. And therapy is a place where I bring these things into full view so I can see, oh, I didn't know I believed that. My unconscious was keeping me from living a true relational life. So people come to me, their relationships are broken, they feel broken, they're depressed, maybe suicidal, or maybe just having trouble getting along with their kids. They don't know then what they're doing that gets in the way. They can easily point out everything everybody else needs to change, but they don't know what they need to understand about themselves that keeps them from relating well and keeps them making bad choices over and over again. So yes, they want to know the truth, but they don't know how. So they're really asking for help, but they're asking the wrong question. They're saying, tell me what to do. And my answer to them is really, actually, I need to help you learn how to be differently, not just do things differently. You need to be a different person, be more self-aware, be more vulnerable, be more courageous. And the answers to your problems will come out of living differently. This is Jesus's point. If you can live in a transparent, loving, dependent way, dependent on God, you will live a more powerful life. This is the truth. But most people don't know that. So it takes a process of helping them discover it.
Yes, when you're saying that, there are key words you used here. We are relational beings. You allowing yourself to be more vulnerable. And so it reminds me, a part of your book talks about knowing yourself, knowing your personal power, your centered self. And you just talked about being God dependent. And then I go back in psychology and recall the attachment styles. Because what you're saying is like the attachment style: secure, anxious, and avoidant, anxious, avoidant, whatever the terms are. But there are people who have been refusing to connect, to be together, to be vulnerable. And Jesus came to tell us that we should trust.
Yes. And have the courage to be vulnerable. It takes courage to be vulnerable. And if you have the courage to be vulnerable, then you're trusting God will go with me. Now, throughout the Bible, God has promised to give us strength. He has not promised to give us an easy life. He has not promised us that there will be no suffering. Every one of Jesus's disciples died a violent death except for one, and he died in prison. So he doesn't say, hey, your life's going to be easy and everything's going to go your way and you know, follow me and you'll become very rich. No, he says, if you follow my teachings, you will live the most meaningful life anyone has ever lived. If you live this way, you'll be rich beyond belief in terms of your relationships and in terms of the love in your life and the wisdom that you will live. But it doesn't mean that problems won't come your way. He doesn't say you won't have problems. He says, I'll help you solve them. He's a power source to solve those problems. So it's a mind perspective.
Mm-hmm.
How is it that I want to live? I want to live a very self-aware life, a life of love, a life of power. But the power that Jesus was talking about, which we now see, is not power over people, it's power with people. How is it that I can inspire people rather than control them? It's a much more powerful way to live. And this is what we need now, because when we're afraid, we want to control things. People are afraid and we're looking for control. We're looking for control. And if we clamp down harder on control, it makes us more afraid, not less afraid. If we can figure out this way of living that Jesus talks about, which I think is psychologically brilliant, we can find our way out of this with actually a better life.
So when you say to be also God dependent, it means we won't be in that sense feeling our inner security without God, because that's what Jesus said, right?
Right. If you feel alone, you feel insecure. Yeah, this is a hard one for us in Western society. The notion of dependence. We think independence is health. I shouldn't need anybody or anything. And that keeps people away from therapy. It keeps people away from God, thinking I should be independent. This is a myth. I talk about this in the book, the myth of individuality. People who really believe they're individuals, they don't need to listen to other people, they don't need any other thing. They're very, very aware of what everybody else believes. So they survey the group, they survey the world, they say, well, they believe this, they believe that. Well, I don't need any of that. They don't realize that their notion of independence is a very relational construct. They have to see what other people believe to know that they're different from it. So they're still in relationship with everyone else. They just have a relationship of avoidance. It's an attachment style, but it's a relational style to avoid others, and it doesn't lead to greater health. So hard for us to grasp. Wait, you're telling me that dependence is good? I'm saying yes. Yes, a healthy attachment to God and others. I'll call it dependence. A healthy dependence on God and others, learning how to do that in a healthy way, is again the most productive and the most powerful way to live. But we have to embrace that notion that I need other people. I have needs. I need a relationship with something greater than me, outside of me. We're made that way. We can try to deny that, but we can't escape our ontology. The way that we're actually made to be is to seek a relationship with something greater than ourselves, outside ourselves. It's interesting, in psychoanalysis in the last century, a guy by the name of Heinz Kohut, not a Christian, developed a whole new branch of psychoanalysis called self-psychology. And it was based on this one construct, that we're all seeking a relationship with something greater than ourselves, outside ourselves. He's not Christian at all, and yet this is the central truth of the Bible. We're all seeking a relationship with something greater than ourselves, outside of ourselves. And if we can embrace that notion, we're on the right path to finding a healthier way to live.
Yes. And so for people, like when you explore in one of the chapters, knowing your feelings, I know in New Year's, we will have an interview with you about this, about the new book, a new book,
Yes.
Emotions, Emotional Management, knowing the feelings. And one of the main questions that people ask is, how can I boost my self-esteem?
Yes.
Where to begin?
Right. It is important, because even though Jesus said a lot about denying yourself, he said, deny yourself and follow me. You can misread that and thinking, well, then myself is bad, to deny myself. No, he was saying you should deny your false self. He also said you're created in the image of God. So who you are has powerful intrinsic worth. So the false self, the part of you that's destructive, the part of you that isn't relational, the part of you that's self-damaging to yourself, the negative self-esteem, those parts of you we want to set aside. But the true self is the self that's made in the image of God. That's where our self-esteem comes from. We should have very much esteem for our true self. Our true self is the vulnerable, dependent, loving, connecting self that we were made to be. That true self is when it's operating in the world, when I'm relating well with you, my self-esteem goes up. So basically, therapy is helping people raise their self-esteem by helping them be in better relationships with other people. So that's how we raise their self-esteem. You can't do it on your own. You didn't get low self-esteem on your own. You can't raise your self-esteem on your own. Other people hurt your self-esteem and made it go down. You need other people to heal it and make it go up. And God, your relationship with God, is the most powerful resource for improving your self-esteem. I find when people come to me, we work on their relationship skills, and they're able to identify their emotions. They're able to be vulnerable. They're able to connect better, and they find always a better relationship with God. Now, sometimes they have their own language for that, but I find them all becoming a more spiritual people as they open up to their relational abilities.
Yes, it's interesting. You're saying this because, as you pointed out, Jesus himself, everything was God-centered, and that's the kickstart of it all. I remember people telling me, yeah, but you can read this book. It says, look at yourself in the mirror, say, I love you every day. I say, I think it's a good technique, but I don't think it's going to change the core of your belief. Because how can you believe I love myself because, but then when you depend on God, as Jesus taught us, then I know the rest of the sentence. I love myself because I'm a child of God.
That's right. That's right. We love because he loved us first. That's what the Bible says.
Right.
I've written a whole book on this, so I won't get into it, but I've written a book on shame because I think shame really trips us up. And I firmly believe the one thing that heals shame and produces self-esteem is grace. And grace, or God's love for us, is an experience, not an idea. So you can't stand in front of the mirror and convince yourself of the idea. You have to experience it. It's a personal experience with a loving God who loves you no matter what, no matter what. Once you experience that, your self-esteem goes up. I'm lovable. You know you're lovable when you feel loved. And many people come to me who have not had that experience. So they don't know what I'm talking about. What does it mean to feel loved no matter what? They don't know. And entering into that kind of relationship with God where you feel it changes you.
It changes us. And that's the way that the Christ showed. And when you talk about knowing your centered self, it's so interesting because many people think that to get there, they just need to, like, even some therapists say, pamper yourself. But even science shows that when I reach out to others who are suffering, that's when I rescue myself too.
That's right.
Right? And that's the way of the Christ, right?
Yes. That whole section in the book on how the centered self is not self-centered. That the true way of living, if you want to be a centered self, is not to focus on yourself. Yet, just like you said, we have plenty of research to suggest that when we reach out to others is when we feel the most grounded. I used to work in a mental hospital, and when I was doing my training, we worked with severely depressed people. And one of the treatments was we gave them jobs to do to help others. You know, you're gonna go help that person make their bed. You're gonna go help that person go for a walk. And we found the depression lifted when they were able to be of service to other people. The centered self is not self-centered. If you know someone who is self-centered, then they're not a spiritually centered person.
Not at all. Exactly. And now, on this Christmas day, that we are revisiting all these issues and people are here with us. And the question is, this therapist still lives. Jesus is still living. He knows us. And that's the most, one of the most beautiful discoveries, that he knows us. If we go through passages that he knew us and he taught us how to be not only with him, but with one another and boost this love amongst ourselves based on the practice of goodwill, being of goodwill, to really reach that peace amongst us.
Yes. This day, among all days, is a day we should celebrate that truth. We have a God who lives today among us. If we want to reach out and have a relationship with him, that God exists. Jesus, unlike the leader of every other religion, says, you don't have to work to come to me. I will come to you. All you have to do is invite me into your life. I will come to you. We have a God who seeks a relationship with us. This is different from every other religion where we have to go seek God. Jesus turns that on its head. He says, I'm here to help you. I'll just ask. Ask. And I'm a psychologist, so I take a psychological bent. When I look at the teachings of Jesus, I see what is the profound psychological truth in that statement. That's why I wrote this book. It's what is the psychological wisdom in his teaching. But his message was much bigger than that. His message was, what is the spiritual truth in what I'm saying? That I can enter your life and renew your mind and transform you. Just ask me. All you have to do is ask. And this day of all days, we should celebrate that great truth.
Thank you so much, Dr. Baker, for this amazing book. And we recommend that everyone gets it and give it to your friends and family members, colleagues, neighbors, because you never know what people need. But a sure thing, people need something. And that's something, Jesus has always something to give to us. Right, Dr. Baker? You have a final comment you want to share, a final message for those who are here with us on this Christmas day?
I do. No matter where you are in life, there is help for you. I spent many, many years studying psychology, getting a PhD. I studied with one of the greatest psychoanalysts in our country. And I found, after studying him for years, that what he was saying, Jesus already said in principle. So there is great, powerful wisdom for you to change your life in the teachings of Jesus. So I encourage you to, yes, read my book, but you should read his book. Open his book, and you will find powerful wisdom to live your life in a more meaningful, in a richer way.
Yes, Dr. Baker, we vouch for what you said, and we recommend it, and we would say more than ever, we need to end this year with a new mindset, because the pandemic is about our own construction on earth. We can turn it around if we are willing to embrace the new life, right?
Yes, correct. That is correct.
Thank you, Dr. Baker. We hope to see you soon again for New Year's, beginning a new year with a fresh mind and with this God dependency that is forever living for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Dear friends, thank you so much for being with us. I know it's short. I know you want more. I want more too. But in the book, you can go to the website, drmarkbaker.com. Get to know more of his works. Get to know more of his books. These books are profoundly life-changing. And it's about bringing the comfort to your heart. Remember, we are here to grow. And that's what the book talks about. But you're not alone. Jesus is with us. And he is the therapist. Of course, he's much more than that. But right now, we need a helping hand. And he is the most loving therapist we could have ever had in this life and forever. We wish you many blessings. Merry Christmas.